We'll just give it a minute for a couple more folks to join. That pop-up does remind me to let you know that this is recorded, and we will have it up in the next couple of days on our website. You will get an email if you're signed up for policy updates, letting you know when it is up. Please share it if there's people that couldn't make the meeting. We'd love to have them join in. So I am joined here with my partner in crime, the yin to my yang, Susan Shepard Carlson. And we hope to give you a bunch of information on what's going on from a federal policy perspective, and then as we have time from a state policy perspective over the course of the next hour. So we've done something a little bit different this time for those of you that have been on before. I've got a bunch of links I'm going to be throwing in the chat as we go. Now, these links, if you don't have a chance to catch them out of the chat, or if you find the chat distracting as you are going through this, that's okay. We will have them available as a document when we upload the recording of the session on our website later, and we'll also have the slides available. So I just wanted to let you know what's going on there. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So again, my name is Jen Wisdahl. I work for FASD United, and I work as the COO, but policy is my first love. And this has been a fantastic journey working on policy and working with all of you to get meaningful legislation passed for people living with FASD. I want to introduce Tom Donaldson. He is the president and CEO of FASD United, with any updates the organization might have, and just say hello.
Jen, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone out there. It's good to see you after I guess a 1-month hiatus with the Policy Forum. There is so much going on. You know, things are really now starting to take shape here in Washington with the new Congress. So Jen and Susan are going to brief you on all of that, what it means for FASD, of course, and what it means for all of us as advocates. There'll be a lot to do with some real opportunities that you all have set up with the incredible groundwork over the last couple of years. So, you know, I would just remind you, rather than carrying on with an update, please make sure you look at the weekly roundup every Monday. I know you do, and keep up to date with all that we have planned for this fall. We're going to have a week-long series of activities here in DC with affiliates, advocates, researchers, and so forth. And there it is. As fast as I can say it, Jen produces it, that week of September 18th to the 21st. So
read your mind.
Keep that in mind, and on with the show. Thanks, Jen. Thank you, everyone.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tom. And just, I'm going to throw some links in the chat on this right now. If you want to be kept aware of these activities that are going on that week, these are activities that are open to everyone. Obviously, we have our affiliate summit going at the same time, and that is something that I'm sure our affiliate director, Susan Ellsworth, can talk to. But these other events, we encourage you to join us. Come to DC, come to our nation's capital, and wear your red shoes, and feel free to advocate for people living with FASD and for this legislation. The National Research Briefing is going to be quite a bit of information on what's going on in the world of discovery on FASD and where we're at. Something we hope to continue doing year after year. And then our Hill Day, this will be all of us up at the Capitol, meeting with our legislators and talking about why FASD is an important issue. The other thing I wanted to point out, in just to have you save the date on your calendars, and I'll throw a link in the chat as well, is the ICC FASD, the Interagency Coordinating Committee on Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorders. So these are all the federal agencies and their representatives. They're kind of briefing for the year on FASD. That's coming up on April 17th. And we'll actually be presenting there on our Family Navigator program and the work that Heather French and the Family Navigation team has been doing in terms of supporting people and families and directing people to resources. So if you haven't checked out our Family Navigator program yet, I strongly encourage you to do so. They are there to help. We have live staff as opposed to dead staff. No, we have live staff available to be of support and find resources as much as we can from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. So if you call, there is a person there. Sometimes you'll get voicemail, yeah, but on the whole, you're going to catch a live person and be able to have a chat and let them know what you need. And that's been just a really vibrant program that has done a lot of work. So I really appreciate them. And then speaking of appreciation, love our affiliates. So Susan, do you have any updates you'd like to give on the affiliate network?
Thanks, Jen. I'm Susan Ellsworth. I'm the FASD United Affiliate Director, and always glad to spend the day with you guys. You do such excellent work, and a lot of our affiliates are heavily involved in the advocacy work across the country. Our network is expanding. We have some international affiliates now and looking forward to getting to know them. If you have any questions about what it's like to be an affiliate or how that might differ from just the work that the advocates are doing or how we can partner together in your state, please reach out to me and let me know. And my email address is right there. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Susan. And if you'd like more information about joining the affiliate network, definitely go to our website, click on affiliates, and there's all the information you need on how to join. So let's get into the main event, the FASD Respect Act 2.0. When it's released, we're probably not going to call it 2.0, but for our purposes internally, we're calling it 2.0 because there are some slate changes and some major changes that we want to bring you up to speed on. The original bill was 64 pages long. And some of the feedback we got from legislators and some of the pushback we got was that they didn't even have time to read the full bill. It was just very, 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 very long. And so this is a bill that's framed based on the original bill and trying to keep as much as possible from the original bill, but shaped through what got put through the Senate Help Committee last year. So if some of you remember last year when we introduced the legislation, the Senate Help Committee, the chairs took to it and came up with some agreed upon language from the bill. So what parts of the bill they thought they could support and get through committee and in a bipartisan way. And so we took that language, married it with the overarching goals, and then gave it to our lead authors, and they put it through their spin. And we've come up with the Respect Act 2.0. And Susan, I don't know if you want to talk to that a little bit.
Sure. I mean, it obviously was a challenge to take a 60 plus page bill and do it. I think it's maybe 3 or 4 pages, but I just want to say that it took the most important pieces that will allow this this disability to be recognized and understood in our states and tribes, and that's the building state and tribal systems. And so that's a big piece. It amends a code, and this is for those policy nerds or anybody who cares. I don't know if any other than me probably cares, but there is a code that was passed, an authorization code in the federal statutes back in 1998. So that's expired. So it puts this language in there. So if you, and we do have the draft for you to see on the website, and Jen's gonna show that link. What I did, and if you just took the way that was amended, it would be hard, I think, for the general person to see how it fit into that language. So I did that for you, and it's draft. So there were programs back in 1998 on education awareness and services, and so it amended that, and then they picked up the concepts of the building, state, and tribal systems, which has been really a cornerstone of all the bills that have been introduced to reauthorize since the language expired. So it doesn't have all the detail that was in the Respect Act, but there is language that will the legislative intent that states should do a strategic plan, and that there should be an FASD coordinator. And so there's general language, and then the Center for Excellence, we have that. That's the same concept that was in the Respect Act, and that allows for there's it's a lot of the same language from the Respect Act on the Center for Excellence, and it provides funding and technical assistance to states to help states, but also grants to support to state and local affiliates for training, support, whatever, training for all sorts of professions, whether they be teachers, judges, probation. So I think the substance is in this. And it's going to be such an easier sell because it's a lot more simple. And staff are going to like this. Well, staff liked it. They're the ones that took what we gave them and redid it. We've suggested a couple amendments to that. And that, I don't know if you've got a slide, the next slide on, Jen. Yes. So it's currently with, we had a meeting with the staff, and it's currently with legislative council with the revisions so we can get it ready for introduction. And we have our 4 lead co-sponsors. Now you'll notice that there are 3 that we had last Congress, and we have a new co-sponsor in the House, Representative Don Bacon from Nebraska. He's, I believe, a adoptive foster dad, and actually I think signed on last time without us even doing any advocating. So we're excited about him.
I think too with him, he is known for his ability to get things done. He was voted one of the most productive members of the House last year.
Bipartisan.
Bipartisan, yeah. So he's able to, I think that's going to be really helpful given that we have a Democratic Senate and a Republican-led House, that we have somebody that's able to do that. So question in the chat was, is there a bill number yet? And the answer is no. The bill number will happen after it gets introduced. And it has to get through Legislative Council first. I'm going to go ahead and put a link to the bill text in the chat. I would encourage you to maybe wait until it's over to go through and start reading through it. And if you have questions on the bill text, we have a standing meeting every Wednesday at noon Eastern, from noon to 12:30 Eastern. And it usually runs over a little bit, to be honest, where you can come in and ask any questions you have. I know the typical thought is just to write off an email real quick if you have some questions, but honestly, if you have a question, there's a very, very good chance that somebody else has the same question, and they're probably going to be waiting on the policy drop-in to ask it. So if you need to email, absolutely go ahead. You know, I'm not saying don't email. I'm just saying this is another avenue for you. And I might wait to check out the bill text when you have time to kind of sit down and digest it. But I put that in the chat. And I noticed, Joel, you have your hand up, and you'll want to unmute yourself before you go.
Just a quick question. Is this an executive summary of the bill and that there's a larger bill, or is the 3 or 4 pages the entire bill?
That is the entire bill. We have been counseled that the bills need to be shorter. And
Okay.
this is what the lead authors, because at the end of the day, we can tell them we want this, we want this, we want this, we want this. You know, we could create a laundry list miles long. At the end of the day, the legislators, the people who are introducing the bill, they have final approval of what goes in. So we can push back and, oh, can we please add this? And, oh, we need this, or our constituents, well, the constituents won't support it unless it has that. We can do that. But at the end of the day, yeah, this is their bill.
And I do want to note, and we'll talk about, this is a reauthorization bill. And as you look at it, you'll see there are no appropriation amounts. And that was at the suggestion of staff to have as it's such sums as may be necessary for fiscal years 24 through 28. And so the idea, because we've had support on the policy side from especially on the Senate side, is to quickly get through the reauthorization, which gives the authority for Congress to appropriate. And then, but as we're doing that, also, we're going to be working on the appropriation side to convince them what appropriations are needed and what they currently are, what, you know, and compared with other areas and what's needed. So there aren't any numbers to it right now, so you'll have to kind of stay tuned on that piece.
But
I
we
mean,
have already, yeah, we know what those numbers should be. And we've already met with and started meetings and outreach with the Senate Appropriations chairs, both of whom were highly supportive of the bill last go round. So, and that's Senator Collins from Maine and Senator Murray from Washington State. Those are all things that are kind of happening on the back end.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good question.
Good question. So we did want to, because there's a lot of people on here that either haven't been on in quite a while, or maybe you're just kind of joining this process. And so some of you seasoned veterans may zone out a little bit at this, but I think it's a worthwhile reminder of, here's the process that we need to go through to be able to get this bill introduced, get it signed into law. So this is this is a very simplified version of the steps that we need to go through. But what will happen when the bill is introduced is there will actually be 2 separate bills, one for the House, one for the Senate introduced. And they will go to their respective committees. Now, last time when the bill was introduced, the bill covered topics that in a way that it actually got put in one committee, but it had kind of tentacles reaching into 2 other committees. And so we did simplify this down. So it is just in the Senate, it'll be the HELP committee, Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. And in the House, it'll be the Energy and Commerce Health Subcommittee. Again, not much different than last year, but without those other tentacles reaching out. So that's just removing a bit of a barrier there. So we're waiting for step 4 for the bill to be introduced and assigned a bill number. And then it'll go to committee, and we want to try and push it through committee as quickly as possible. So we'll come up with some steps next on how we're going to get there. But I just wanted to kind of do a general overview. And, you know, with the clock ticking, every legislative session, it lasts 2 years. Congress lasts 2 years. So we have technically 2 years to get it passed. I don't think it's going to take that long. I think all the work we did last year definitely, and sorry, the last 2 years, the last Congress is going to help us get through that. But just wanted to put that in there. So who are your lawmakers? You would be surprised at how often this comes up where people contact me and say, oh my goodness, I just reached out to my senator and he was so receptive, but he says the bill number doesn't make sense. And that's because they contacted their state senator, not their federal senator. Just want to point out, again, different lawmakers, be sure you're looking at the ones in the that work out of Washington, D.C., not the ones that are working there in your state. In every state, you have 2 senators and 1 rep. And this is my TikTok dance, 2 senators, 1 rep. And in the Senate, they serve 6 years. And that body is known as the Senate. In the House, our Congress people serve 2 years, and these are staggered terms. So when you're looking at your legislators, you're going to want to check and see when their next election cycle is. That's something that's helpful to know. The House and Senate together, we refer to them as Congress. So just if you're looking at terms, those are some helpful, useful terms to know. A way to find out who your congressional representative is, your congressperson, is to go to congress.gov and pop in your address, because who represents you in the House is going to be determined by where you live. So that is the best and quite literally the only way to find out who your legislator is with any degree of accuracy. The other website I put here is just kind of a neat one to check out, opensecrets.gov. And that website will tell you who the donors are to those legislators, who the biggest donors are. And that can be helpful in terms of looking at, what's important to them and who they're in alignment with. In some cases you might be surprised. In other cases, it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But knowing that can help when you're talking to them, or when you're looking for organizations in your state or in your area to sign on and support the bill. So just looking at the roles, we're going to refer to sponsors or lead authors. So this is their bill, and they're using their political capital or their political will to push it through. For example, Senator Klobuchar has already gone and talked personally to the heads of Senator Cassidy and Senator Sanders of the Senate Help Committee, to let them know that this bill is going to be introduced. Here's the draft language we're looking at. Do you see any red flags? Are there any potential roadblocks to this? When do you think would be a good time to introduce? So they're doing the legwork on the Hill with their with other lawmakers to try and get the bill passed. Co-sponsors. Co-sponsors, last year we were able to rack up a ton of co-sponsors, and that really helped show political will for the bill. We hope to do the same this go round. And our co-sponsors are legislators who have signed on to support the bill. Arguably, they'll vote for it when it comes to a vote, and they may extend some of their political capital to help get the bill pushed through. It's just a way of showing, yeah, I support this bill, I'm in favor of it, this is a cause that I care about. And then supporting organizations. We had a list of hundreds of organizations that signed on last year to say they support the bill and they think it's important. This shows our legislators that, yeah, it's not just these moms and dads out there that are caring about this cause. There are other organizations and entities within their states that are really tied into this and think this is a good thing. So those are just kind of the different roles within this. So here's the big piece. How can we get involved? What can we do? And again, for those of you that have been around a while, this is going to be a bit of review, and I'm going to apologize, but we want to make sure we're that we're hitting everybody, that we're able, we're keeping everybody at on the same playing field. So things you can do is to get organizations to sign on to support, get co-sponsors, and then get other people involved. So talking about organizational support, we do have a new support letter up and ready to go as of about 11 o'clock last night. So if you go to the policy site, which you access through the FASD United site, or you can access on its own. You can get the form that organizations can fill out to sign on to the letter of support. And this is really common. We end up getting a number of these requests to sign on to letters over the course of the year. Like we just signed on for one for maternal child health, for example, as FASD United. So we'll go out and approach all of the national organizations that have signed on in the past, and some other partners that we're now working with. We will be sending out very shortly an email to all of the organizations that signed on last go round and asking them to sign on again. But this is a really great way to garner support for the bill and show that there's a need in your state for something to be done. So I noticed in the chat that I made a mistake, and it's opensecrets.gov, not .org, not .gov. I apologize on that, and I will have that later on in the presentation too. And then there was also a question about municipal or county governments, and yes, absolutely. If the municipal or county government is willing to sign on, Lucas, that's a really good question. Absolutely, that's something that would be substantially helpful. So how to get co-sponsors? The way that we were most effective last time, so in years past when FASD legislation was introduced, there would be a letter circulated and everybody would be asked to write a letter to their 2 senators and their reps, or write a letter to their legislators and tell them that, you know, this bill was important. COVID changed all of that, because now, instead of having to travel to Washington, D.C. from the comfort of your own living room in your pajama pants, you too can meet with your senator. So we started doing meetings with our legislators, and we ended up doing just under 1,400 of them in the last legislative session. Sorry, just under 400 of them in the last legislative session. I was way busier than I thought. But still, we did a substantial number of meetings, and those meetings got us to the co-sponsors because we were able to pitch our case in person, for lack of a better term. So this is kind of the path that we followed for those meetings. And again, you as a person living in the US have a right to connect to your lawmakers for any reason and talk to them on your own. You do not need us. You do not need to follow our path. We are not here to tell you what to do. We are here to support you in doing it in a way that we know is effective. You may have a better way. You may have a different way, and that's okay. You know, again, we're not here to tell you what to do. We're here to support you in doing what we think is going to be the best path to get us there. So don't take this as you have to do it this way. Take it as you can do it this way if this is the most helpful way for you. So we start with getting the meeting. And so that would be you as a constituent reaching out to the lawmaker's office and asking them to meet to talk about FASD and why it's important. And we are within a day or two of having the support materials available for this. I do have the text of the an email, like a draft text that you can copy and paste to send to the legislators to get that meeting up and available on the website. But again, we'll send out an email as soon as that's all put together. Sometimes you'll have to fill out a form on their website. That's usually a little bit less effective. I'm going to share a website with you further down, Bill Track 50, where you can look up the email addresses of the legislative staff that you'd probably want to be meeting with. Legislative assistants are typically who you'll want to connect with, or their scheduler, to be able to get a meeting and just bypass that whole form online, because that does tend to have, you don't get past the gatekeeper as easily with that. So but you, the constituent, would reach out with your 2 senators and your 1 rep and get the meeting. And that would be an online meeting. You can meet with them in their office when they're in district. That can be very powerful. Or you can do it online. So once you've got the meeting, connect with me. Connect with Chris Melfi. And Chris, if you can turn on your camera and raise your hand if you're still here, and if you're not, that's okay, because I know I keep you very, very busy. Chris is waving. But connect with us, and our email addresses and phone numbers will be listed at the end of the presentation, and set a time to book a practice call. Some of you might not need that. Some of you have done multiple calls with your legislators, and hey, that's not a support you need. But if it is, or if there's other people in your state that are doing this that might need some help and support, connect with us, book a practice call. We're here to help. So when you have the meeting, you can choose to have FASD United staff, usually it's Susan or I, attend and provide the latest updates on the bill. If you want to have that meeting on your own without us, that's okay too. But this is typically the flow of a legislative meeting. You get about a half an hour with the legislator or their staff. You really only want to take up about 15 to 20 minutes at the most, so you can have some conversation with the legislators at the end, right? And have some back and forth conversation where they can ask their questions. And we've got some primers and some trainings on how to have these meetings, if that's something that you're into, or we just book a practice meeting and we'll help you script it all out. Once you've done a couple of them, they're really comfortable and very easy to do. I know, for example, Annette, if she's still on the call from California, probably did easily 50 of these calls last year. And once you get into it, Melissa Jacobus, same thing. We have some super advocates that have done a number of these, and we may ask them to speak at a future meeting, kind of talk about how they managed to get all these calls in. I know Rachel Singh was another one, Jen Worden. There were a number of people who are quite good at this, but when in doubt, reach out, and we're happy to help. And then the last thing is we'll give you some backup materials to follow up with. And then the constituent sends a thank you and again asks for the support. And it's as easy as that. It really is just doing that reach out, a couple of Zoom calls, and let's say they say no. Well, every no gets us one step closer to a yes. We know that last year we did last legislative session, we did almost 400 meetings. We got 74 members of the House and 10 members of Congress to sign up. So that's kind of our ratio. We know if we want more, we need to do more meetings, or get better at our pitch, right? But that's kind of in a nutshell how we're going to go about this. Getting others involved. I can't stress this enough. And I had a big realization of my own as we were kind of starting out on the advocacy path last legislative session, that my family and friends had no idea what I was doing. And they could be big supporters of what I was doing if I only let them know. So I do really encourage you to talk about this. Talk about this with your family and friends, why it's important. Encourage them. Maybe they live in a different legislative district. Maybe they have a different representative than you. It's okay for them to book a meeting and have you talk about why it's important. That's okay. You can cross those lines. Let's say you have a family member in another state. It's okay to book a meeting in another state with that family member, because if it's important to that family member, then it's important to their legislator, right? So the other thing you can do is, if you're involved in an organization in your state, or let's say a bunch of parents of kids with FASD, or you're involved in the foster care community in your state, invite us to come speak at a meeting, or set a meeting to talk about this and talk about how you can get more people in your state involved in working towards passage of the FASD Respect Act or other meaningful legislation for people living with FASD. we are happy to do that. I know that's kind of how we started out gaining momentum on the Respect Act last go round, was really by having these state meetings where we'd ask anybody and everybody who was involved in the state to come together and kind of hear and learn about the FASD Respect Act. Obviously, you can invite them to this meeting or any of the weekly policy drop-ins as well. So some resources, I've got some websites. We've talked a lot about the policy drop-in, and we've talked a little bit about staff, and then we have a Facebook group that you can also join in and be a part of. I got Open Secrets right on this list. So if you're writing down website addresses, under the policy tab for FASD United, that's going to take you to our policy site. Some of the materials there have not yet been updated for the new bill. I just want to warn you, if you're going there and you see the old logo on something, or you see a bill number on something, that's old information. We should have that wrapped up by the end of the week and all put together. And again, I'll send out an email, a blanket email to everybody when that's up to date. But it's a great place to look at previous updates for training and information. Who supported last year. That's just some good information to have. Again, finding out who your 2 senators and your reps are, you can do that through congress.gov. And then once the bill is introduced, you can also follow and receive alerts in your mailbox for when something happens on the bill. So you can get updates delivered to you there. A site I really, really like is this Bill Track 50. Bill Track 50, either it looks at any piece of legislation and you can search where legislation is by state. So let's say you want to know what's happening with FASD in Texas. You can type in FASD and select Texas, and it'll tell you what FASD related legislation is being worked on this year. It can also, you can look up lawmakers and see which staff members work in their office and what their email addresses and phone numbers are. So it's just a really useful tool. I use it all the time. And then Open Secrets, obviously that's the one that's looking at, who's donating to which campaigns. And in some cases, those are organizations that you can get on board by having them sign on as organizational support. And then when you mention that one of their larger donors is signed on as a supporter of the bill, that makes it kind of easier to get legislative support. So our policy drop-ins, information on our policy drop-ins is through the FASD United website. It's the same Zoom link every week. We don't have it on weeks when we have our policy forum. And that really is an opportunity to connect with policy staff and with Susan Shepard Carlson and just ask any policy related questions you have. Maybe you're looking at doing state legislation. Maybe you're looking at a bill that just went through somewhere and you have some questions on it. We don't claim to have all the answers, but we can try. We can look it up. We can see what other resources we can pull in. And again, chances are if you have a question, somebody else is going to have that same exact question. And this is a great place to bring that out. And a lot of the content that we come up with for our policy forum actually comes from those meetings, the questions that are asked in those meetings. So it's really helpful if you have those questions. All right. Susan, did you have anything you wanted to add? I've been kind of rattling off at the mouth here
No, I think
for about 20 minutes.
No, there was a question. Liz had a question on co-sponsors from last Congress, and it's a great idea. And we haven't actually even talked to our staff, the staff about that. But what they do when they introduce the bill, they do send out an email, not to all members of Congress, but usually subject matter related, like health. And so I think it would be good to include the previous co-sponsors on that request to co-sponsor. But I also think that, if they sign up right away, that's great. But, as we go on, there's going to be, I think, just keeping connected with your members of Congress, because this is not a one and done, folks. We're going to be doing other things as we go along. So just create that relationship. If there's new staff, I think it's worthwhile. So
Absolutely. Well, there's another question in the chat about, don't you only meet with your direct representative? So, if you live in Maine, do you only meet with with Senator King, Senator Collins, and Representative Pingree, because you live in their district? And that's a really good question. And I think, asking yourself, okay, do I work for an organization? Because a lot of us work for organizations that support people with FASD. Do I work for an organization that represents people around the entire state? Okay, yeah, then I do have a reason to be reaching out to that legislator. Do you have a family member that's willing to reach out to their legislator on your behalf in another state, in another area, that's willing to talk about why it's important to them, and then maybe pass the microphone over to you? That's perfectly legitimate, because if someone in the district or someone serving that district takes time out of their day to reach out, that is important to the legislator, and they want to know that. So it is okay to go out of district. It is okay to go out of state, provided you have some kind of connection there. Are you supporting people there? Are you, do you own property there? Do you, there's other reasons and other ways to connect. But that was a really, really great question. So I'm just looking through the chat here real quick, and thank you so much, Sarah, about your comment on the meetings just being straightforward and easy. That is our goal. We want these meetings to be super simple when you reach out to your legislators. It can be a little bit intimidating the first time you do it. I know I was quaking in my boots, and the more you get to it, the more you realize that the lawmakers and their staff, they really do listen, and they want to hear what you have to say. And it really is a great way to tell your story and feel heard, for those of you that may have had challenges with that in the past. So any other questions before we proceed on the FASD Respect Act on 2.0? All right, Kathy Hotelling, you're up, my friend. Although the chat entry, I don't know if I should call on you after that. And you are muted, my dear.
To unmute. Thank you. Terry developed a very attractive, if I may say so, flyer, similar to, but not the same as the one we used last year. We have been using this with state legislators, and I'd like to use this with US senators and reps with the appropriate accommodations to show the bill number, et cetera. Can we do that, or do you still want us to use only the one that comes from FASD United?
So I am not the boss of you.
Oh, really? Oh my God. All this time I've been acting like you were my boss.
No, all jokes aside, if there is something that works for you in your state that will resonate with your lawmakers because it is a state related thing, absolutely use what is going to work for you in your state. We do provide materials, and we will provide materials exactly like we did last year, of a one-page state sheet that talks about, the percentage of FASD in your state and how that might impact. Now, if you'd like us to change up that state sheet based on information you have about your state, hey, cool, we can totally do that. If you want to create your own, hey, no problem. That's totally fine too. We just want to make sure we have a baseline document that anybody in the state can use, whether they're affiliated with your organization or not. So, it really is, I encourage you to localize things. There's no issue whatsoever with that. And I'm sure Terry did a fabulous job, as she does with everything. So lots of
Yeah,
respect.
Canva's not our friend, so this took a lot of work. And Sue Barner did it too, so worked on it. And I did the facts, but that's the easy part. They did the design, and I think it's great. I'll send it to you, Jen, and you can give us some feedback if you want. But we have been meeting with state legislators for the last couple of weeks, and things I think pop out a little better for us with the very specifics that we have, the very detailed specifics.
Yeah, I'd love to see it, Kathy. So yeah, and if you do develop things like that, definitely please send them to me, because that can be inspiration for something else that we do. This is meant to be a very collaborative thing too. So if you have ideas or suggestions or thoughts on how we can improve the materials that we're distributing, we are all ears. Let me know. You'll have Chris's email, my email, our phone numbers at the end of the presentation. Reach out.
I don't know your email, but so thank you for sending that to me.
Okay, Kathy. All right. So as promised, here are the email addresses, phone numbers. That is my direct line. You can catch me directly. That is 9 times out of 10, Chris is going to be answering that. The other phone line, that's our main line, but Chris is also fantastic at multitasking and doing that as well. And yeah, reach out if you have questions. If you are a social media person, we do, through our Facebook page, have a group, FASD Respect Act Champions. And that is a place to go and ask questions, share your rah-rahs. I had a meeting with so-and-so today. It went really well. Fantastic. It's just kind of a great space to talk about things policy related if you are somebody who uses Facebook. If there is something posted on the Facebook page, we will do our best to make sure it is also available over on our website or email to accommodate folks that don't use social media, because that's completely valid as well. All right. So changing direction a little bit, I want to talk to you about another initiative that we're working on, and this is kind of in its entry-level stages. We know that IDEA and education are a big concern within the FASD community. I can speak personally to that with my kids, and I know many of you have had challenges with that as well. So to that end, we've been collaborating with Sarah Massault and Marissa Lang from Proof Alliance, and we'll be bringing in some other stakeholders soon to look at the state of education and FASD in the US. And so we have a survey that should be going out live in April, that is based on another survey that was done by a work group from the Affiliate Network a number of years ago, to get some follow-up data on where are we at with FASD in education, restraint and seclusion, expulsions from school, are people qualifying for special education services, things like that. And that report will help give us the data necessary to look at legislation in a meaningful way to be brought forward, hopefully during this legislative session. That is our plan. So this is our big, hairy, audacious plan put here and showing it to you so that we can continue to update you on it. It's nothing set in stone in terms of what we will be putting forward with legislation right now, because we need to do the homework of really what needs to be done in a systemic way to be able to get meaningful legislation passed that will work for everyone, because each state runs their education very, very differently. And so we need something that's going to work for all states and not work to the detriment of one state and to the benefit of another state. So those are some of the considerations that we have going with that. So I'll make sure that we provide updates at our policy forum on where we are at with that on a monthly basis ongoing. The other piece, and I love this graphic, and some of you who are parents and caregivers of kids with FASD will roll your eyes at this, is that we are, and we talked about this last year, this project that we're starting of state FASD report cards. And this is not reporting in on the work that you all are doing in your state. This is really looking at systemically, where is each state in terms of how they are approaching FASD, from the justice system, from CAPTA response to legislation. Is it punitive to biological parents? Is it going against research? Is it going toward the direction research tells us it should? But I had to use the sticker chart graphic because I love that we're going to be using a sticker chart for our states now in terms of FASD. So we've started collecting data on this, and this is an ongoing initiative that we're working on. And again, as things develop, as we begin to have these report cards take shape, I want to report back to you with where we are on those, because that data as well is going to be really helpful for building the case for future legislation. So really looking at legislation in a very systemic way. So, any questions on either of those two projects or initiatives?
So I see Sid's got a question, and it's a great question. Are there contacts with federal agencies with IDEA roles, and are they responsive at all? I think the simple answer is not yet. And unfortunately, the education Department of Education has not been a player with the ICC FASD. It's and correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, it's authorized, but they've never provided a person. But I think once we do our homework and provide data, and also this doesn't, so doing the data, but it also the different national players with education are going to be connected with as well. So once you do your homework, hopefully then they will see the value. But we can also work through that with the ICC FASD.
Well, and oh, sorry, Sid. I apologize. Go ahead, Sid.
Are there any congressional players who track IDEA issues that we've talked with about the lack of responsiveness, if that's our reading on the Department of Education and the IDEA rules?
So what we've done, Sid, and I think I love the direction you're going in, because this is guidance that we need, is we've started by making a list of who we're going to need to get through, who we're going to need to talk to about this, because saying we want to tackle IDEA is a big, that's huge. And when IDEA comes up for reauthorization, that's going to be a scrum for everybody trying to get in there and get their pieces in there. So if we don't lay the groundwork up front, like you're saying, we're not going to have any chance of getting anything through. So to that end, we've started looking at, okay, which organizations might be in opposition of this? Which organizations might be in favor of this? Who do we need to connect with there? What agency, at the agency, who are we going to need to talk to? What legislators, looking at, with our RESPECT Act outreach, we've had outreach to a number of educators, or a number of legislators who sit on the education committees. But does that mean that they're understanding the need for FASD supports as it relates to education, or just this bill? We've been talking to their health staff, not necessarily their education staff. So these are all really absolutely fantastic points. And areas that we're looking at, we're just not quite at that point yet. And is it ambitious to say by January of next year? Absolutely. It might even be naive, given the amount of work that and groundwork that needs to be done. But I think we need to start putting it down into manageable steps and then holding ourselves accountable to those steps in order to be able to get there. And any guidance that you wanted to give us, boy, oh boy, we would appreciate your help and your input.
I'd be glad to get involved. The one brief point I'd make is that the language of the president's executive order on diversity and equity touched on disability. Increasingly, we're seeing that there's a passing reference. I wouldn't say it understands the degree to which disability can be an equity issue, stigma, discrimination, everything else. But I'd be sure to frame it in those terms at the federal level, given that some people are beginning to understand that you can have a useful conversation about diversity and equity unless disability is included. And I think that keeps it away from being perceived as a purely neurodevelopmental issue, subject to all the specialties, and a whole bunch of people at that point sign out of the discussion.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And we've seen that in a lot of the language in the appropriations bills having to do with a lot of equity. So I think, thank you.
Yeah. And, we say IDEA, but it may not be IDEA that we end up going after. Maybe we go after appropriations for better supports and interventions for people with FASD in the education system. Maybe I think this is going to evolve over time based on the data we collect, based on the way things are going in the House and Senate. Based on what kind of bills are being passed, what can we get done? So I think this is, I almost didn't bring it to this meeting because it is a bit fluid at this point, but I also really want to hold us accountable for moving this forward by bringing it to this meeting. And, we've talked about how we wanted to look at IDEA next. Maybe it isn't IDEA. Maybe it is other legislation in the education space that will help support getting us to IDEA or getting us to where we need to be at in an education setting for people with FASD to have equity. So really, really good points. Thank you. And thank you, Sid, for your guidance and wisdom there. We appreciate it. All right. Out of respect for time, I was going to give and allow others to give updates on any legislation that is pending in their states or that they're working on. Happy to stay on and go through that, but realize that you all have very busy days and other jobs and other things to attend to. So if you'd like to stay on and talk about state legislation, like I said, happy to stay here and let's chat through where you're at and what's going on and celebrate with you. But if you need to conclude at this point, I want to thank you very much for being here and recognize that our next meeting is Wednesday, April 26th. You will receive, as long as you're signed up for policy updates, you will receive a reminder in your email the Wednesday before, the Monday of, and the day of, because we want to make sure that you're able to attend if at all possible. And again, the recording should be out within the next couple of days. Does anybody have any state legislation that they're working on that they'd like to talk about?
Not yet. This is Carl.
Oh, my introvert friend from North Dakota.
Yes, we're stuck in committee right now, so we're that's the only update that I have here. So.
All right. You want to just, for people who haven't heard before, mention what your bill is doing?
Well, it's it's through the Senate, North Dakota Senate, and it's in past committee of the House Human Services once, and then got referred back to the House Committee. It adds fetal alcohol spectrum disorders to the state definition of developmental disability. It adds a permanent state recognition for FASD Awareness Day of September 9th every year. And it adds training, which is not for sure that that's going to be able to stay in the bill. Training for all child welfare workers, including foster parents. And it creates a cross disabilities coordinated council to like a task force for fetal alcohol, but it's for many disabilities, not just for fetal alcohol. That makes sense. So yes, it's not what we originally asked for, but we've also made it further this session than we've made it in, I'm told, 30 years. So yeah, a lot of time, lots and lots of time.
That's fantastic though, Carl. Thank you. And thanks for the update. Any other state updates? I know
There is, yeah, for Florida, it's Maryland. I'm usually talking about Colorado. But in Florida, there is a State Senate Bill 228, which will add FASD to the list of things like autism that qualify for developmental disability.
how's the bill going, Marilyn?
I only know that there was a House version that was withdrawn because it was like this one. And I've emailed a couple people involved, but I really don't know. All I can say is it's been introduced and has some sponsors.
Fantastic.
Lori Berman, I think, is the main person.
And thanks, Marilyn. Michael.
And
Oh, sorry.
One point I've made with that is my son received services in Colorado. And we now have a home here also. If he was to be here, he would lose all the services. So that's one thing I point out.
That's a very good point. Absolutely. Michael Jeffrey from Alaska. You had an exciting day recently, yes?
Well, yeah, basically there were a person who was diagnosed with FASD at age 50. And I spent last week in Juneau meeting with 20 different legislators, thanks to the work of Terry Tibbet is setting all this up. And as far as what we were advocating for, in addition to talking about our story and stuff like that, but there's this HB 58, SB 57 to have adult care home licenses. So the idea is, like, if you have a affected person with you, like in the foster care system, and then they age out or something, you can get a license to continue providing the care and bill Medicaid for some things and stuff like that. And so that was the main thing. There's aging and disability resource centers and a crisis now continuum of care within the Department of Health, and the idea of the holistic defense for people with the Public Defender Agency and continuing funding for that. So those were the basic asks, but we also testified in front of committees on the adult care home licenses. So it was intense. I was very glad to get on the plane out of that place on Thursday night. And I finally reached Barrow back in the wide open Arctic, and yes, on Friday. So, but anyway, pretty excited. I think all of us felt that if that we had actually, we did help move the needle. And I see Terry Tibbet has joined us, and maybe she could add something to that. But anyway, it was a great experience, and she was the mastermind on that one as far as setting it up.
Thanks, Mike. Is it okay if I follow Mike, Jen?
Of course. Of course.
So, yes, Michael Jeffrey and Gina Shoemaker flew down to Juneau. Gina's from Anchorage, and we had meetings with a little more than 23 legislators, and in 3 days, and we were able to meet mostly with the legislators themselves. There were only a handful of instances where we met with staff. There was keen interest in what we were talking about, and we were there basically to educate about prenatal alcohol exposure and FASD. That was our main goal, was just to educate each legislator, 19 of whom are brand new this session, freshmen. So we wanted to make sure they knew kind of at the ground level what FASD is and what kinds of things, that are on their plate impact FASD and prenatal alcohol exposure stuff, behavioral health stuff. And so we were just educating. Gina told her compelling story, and Mike had lots of good things to say about his courtroom back in the day when he was a judge, and a lot of questions from the lawyer legislators. They really wanted to hear from Mike, and they wanted to ask him a lot of questions. And one legislator had actually argued in Michael Jeffrey's court back in the day, so he was tickled to be in the same room with the judge. And so anyway, there were really good responses from legislators. We handed out folders that with lots of information, the summary from research that's been done on FASD in the last couple of years. We gave them our 9 core messages booklet, what everyone should know about FASD. We had just a bunch of stuff in the folders, and they were engaged, and it was great. And we have some new allies too. And the last thing I'll say that we did at noon last Thursday, and you'd be welcome if you went on the state legislature website and look for the Lunch and Learn that happened last Thursday. I think it was March 23rd. We had a legislative sponsor, Representative Julie Colomb from Anchorage. She sponsored the Lunch and Learn, which is an hour-long event in the Capitol, in one of the rooms in the Capitol. And they basically sponsor it, and they reserve the room. And we brought in food from Jammy Health and Wellness, from our local mental health provider, provided the funding for the food. So we catered it. We had a really good taco bar. Gina spoke, Mike spoke, I spoke. And then we also showed a clip from this film that just got produced in Alaska about adults, 7 adults with FASD. And it was produced by them, it was written by them, and all those folks. Gina Shoemaker is one of the people, and they just spoke their stories, and it's a really great film. There's a trailer, and you could probably Google it, or Jen has I sent it to her, so she's got the link to the YouTube trailer. It's just a minute long, but we showed that. We got everybody excited about FASD, and it got statewide television coverage, that Lunch and Learn. So it was a really, really, really productive week, and I really thank Mike for rallying, and of course Gina for rallying. Everybody really rallied and did a good job educating legislators and talking about the bill that Mike just mentioned, HB 57 and HB 58 and SB 57, about the adult care home license. Thank you. I know that was long-winded, but there was a lot that happened, and we're happy about it.
There is a link to that Lunch and Learn that Terry put up, and you could sit and watch it, and you can see
I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you could hear the kind of presentations that Gina and I made, and then and see that trailer, which is quite good. The full movie hasn't been released yet, but even the trailer is very compelling. So
I have the
Check it
trailer
out.
queued up. It's only a minute long, so
Oh, do it. Yeah,
yeah.
do it.
and we're gonna have that in our weekly roundup next week. So if you want the
Yay.
link, it'll be there on Monday. Let's see.
No.
Growing up, I always knew there was something different about me, just didn't know what.
I was not too happy. I didn't want to be labeled.
The way I was able to be okay with the challenges, I started talking about it.
I don't really like to consider it a disability because I don't really see it that way.
He's just an amazing guy. He can do so much more than you think he can.
I have a 32-year-old and I have a 16-year-old, and I broke the cycle.
One of my strengths is finding something that I love doing.
Breaking it down into tiny baby steps. Start with step 1. Once it's completed, move to step 2.
One, I wasn't alone, and that there was nothing wrong with me.
I am who I am, and I am blessed to be who I am.
Without my self-advocacy, I wouldn't be as strong and independent as I am now.
To help people understand their strengths and weaknesses so that they can achieve their greatest potential.
Thanks for showing that, Jen. That was
course.
great. Yeah, that's going to be released. We don't know when, maybe September for FASD Awareness Month, the full movie. But at this point, we just have the trailer to show. So thanks for showing it, Jen.
Of course, of course. Any other states that wanted to share before we wrap up for the month? Oh, Marilyn, you had your hand up? Sorry.
Well, I mentioned earlier about the Senate bill in Florida. I wanted to say that for Colorado, I've talked on the phone, I've talked on Zoom, but my state representative here in Florida is like 10 minutes drive away. So I made an appointment, and Jen, you had given me some information about statistics about FASD in Florida. So I sent it to the staff member I talked to. And I took my photos, started out with photos of my kids, talked about my story, and I had a 15-minute block of time. I was in there an hour and a half speaking with her. She gave me a copy. I thought it was the House bill, but she said that's withdrawn. She gave me she had ready for me a copy of the Senate bill. She had a copy of how things get passed in Florida. It was kind of amazing. And who to contact, she wrote them all down, who I should contact if I want to advocate. So it was a really nice surprise. And she was also an older woman, which in some cases they're younger people. I just have to say from experience. And she was older than I am. So it really kind of blew me away that the response I got. And I don't know where it'll go, but it was just kind of amazing.
Well, that's fantastic. I love it when you get that kind of connectivity to the legislative support staff too, and those relationships really can bear fruit. So definitely encourage whenever you can meet in person, if you can do. Zoom has been a great equalizer for that though too.
And Tom Leaks in Florida is he's going to run for state Senate. He's friends with the governor. I'm in a district that I think he's important in the state for whatever it's worth. So
always building those connections. Definitely. Yeah.
Yep.
Fantastic. Well, thank you everybody for being here. Thank you for your time today. And unless there's anything else we need to discuss for the good of the cause, I will let you leave you to be free to move about the country.